Members, it's Thursday, February 25th. Sorry for the late start. This won't become a habit, I promise you. We're having a few problems. But we have two bills before us today. Senate File 640, Senator Jasinski, and Senator Weber's 1354. So, Senator Jasinski, you're up first. This is the salvage title modification. Welcome to the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Yes, this is Senate File 640, which is the auto salvage title requirement modification. If you do recall, we've heard this before in the Senate. It actually passed off the Senate floor 67-0 and did not get taken up in the House, or did not get passed in the House. So we're coming back again this year. A little bit of frustration with our fiscal note. Obviously, we're addressing the finance issues here. So when we originally did this bill in 2019-20 session, the fiscal note showed 4 FTEs for this bill, and we got a revised fiscal note in this beginning of this session that doubled that, went to 8 full-time employees, and almost doubled the cost to about 106% of the original cost. Same bill a year later. So Senator Newman and myself were very frustrated with this. We sent a letter to Commissioner Harrington and said that why would we get a fiscal note that's double, same bill 1 year later? So we did get a revised fiscal note just recently last night that went back to the full four full-time equivalents, but they still have a lot of increased costs from the original bill that was done last year to this year. Some changes in the costs for testing sites, some different anticipations of number of tests per year, but the bill does show in the end game it's a savings of $300,000 per year going fiscal year 24 and 25 and beyond. There is a cost to the driver vehicle services account, a savings in 2023 of $117,000, and then a cost of $166,000 for fiscal years 24 and after that. But again, to the bill, what current law allows is there's an auto salvage title if a car has serious damage, but there's a loophole right now in Minnesota law that if your vehicle is less than $9,000 or over 5 years, this is not required. So what this does is removes that loophole so that consumers like myself who's buying a car for my daughter in college would know up front, it's a transparency bill, that hey, this car was damaged, just letting the buyers know what may have done. Minnesota has the 7th ranked the number of flooded cars coming into our state, so that's a serious issue. So we believe that this bill will help that. Currently Minnesota has one of the weakest states in the country dealing with salvage titles, so we have a lot of cars coming in that get basically their title washed here in Minnesota. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Senator Jasinski. I don't see any questions at this moment. I think I will turn to Ms. Krista Boyd. You did a very good job on the fiscal note, and I know it's revised, and members, it should be at your desk or online, the revised fiscal note.
Madam Chair, it should say revised because it's a new fiscal note. I don't know if it came from Senator Newman's and mine letter, but they did change it from the original concern we had with doubling these number of employees. So it did get revised on those numbers.
Yeah, very good. Much better fiscal note. Senator Kif Meyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Senator Jasinski, this is a bill that really deserves to be signed into law. I mean, this is a protection to our Minnesota people, and many times in salvage vehicles, those who are buying these need most the help as far as protecting them, so this is great. Question I have for you is on the fiscal note in regards to on page 3 of 4, there's $35 fee for the inspection, but 20 goes to general fund and 15 to vehicle services. And there's probably a good reason, but it seems to me it should all go into vehicle services, and just checking if you might know, or maybe staff will know, why is it not all going into DVS special revenue account?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Kif Meyer. It's a great question. I would turn that over to staff. Maybe Ms. Boyd would go through that as the reason why that is.
Good morning, Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. I wish I had a good answer for you on that question. I think it's like a myriad of fees that we have in statute now, where at one point or another, some revenue was diverted to one or another fund, but I don't have a historical reason for that for you. I'm sorry.
Senator Kif Meyer?
Well, sometimes, Madam Chair, these things do just kind of grow into an institution of their own, but especially in regards to this, people who pay into the special revenue account, it's a user fee, it's for services, and it should be, but this is a bit late. Here we are in Finance Committee. I don't know that that is adjustable or changeable, and I certainly don't want to in any way hold up this bill. It's more a matter of funds. I don't know its effect. Sometimes they book these things into the general fund, forecasting and a variety of other things. But we had to think about this in the future, that this may have come about at some point, but I don't know that it's necessary to keep doing this all the time. Fees that are charged for a specific purpose should all go into that purpose and pay for what the people are paying for that service. So just in general, but if this is a long-standing thing and it's where we're at today, then we'll just move it forward. I don't want to in any way hold up this bill. This is really important to the people, and I really appreciate the bill coming forward again.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Senator Kif Meyer. I know Senator Newman has said the very same thing pretty much. Yep, yep. Ms. Boyd, could you please run through the fiscal note?
Sure, Madam Chair, I'll try to be brief. Obviously, by removing the words late model or high vehicle from the number of damaged vehicles that can receive salvage titles, that's going to increase the number of vehicles in that group, in that pool. So those vehicles will need salvage inspections before they can receive a salvage title, and that would fall to DVS staff. So DVS and DPS is assuming that there will be an additional 7,500 inspections in fiscal year 23. That's the first, the effective date is January 1, or the beginning of January 2023. So half a year in that year, and then a 15,000 additional inspections every year thereafter. So then they assume that that creates a need for 2 new inspection sites and 4 new FTEs, and those would be exam and inspection specialists at the department. So the combined build-out cost for those 2 sites is $225,000 in the fiscal note. Those are one-time costs in fiscal year 22, and that would come from the special revenue fund from the vehicle services account. And then there would be annual leases for those inspection sites of a combined $75,000 starting in fiscal year 22. And then the cost for the 4 FTEs is $342,000 in fiscal year 22 and $316,000 every year thereafter. And when I'm referring to these numbers, I'm sorry, I should be pointing you to the table on page 2 of the fiscal note. I should also point out that there are appropriations already in the bill. Those are numbers that came from last year's fiscal note, actually. So when you see the summary table on the front of the fiscal note, that's sort of a net against the appropriations in the bill already. So if you look at the chart on on page 2, you'll see 1 expenditure is restricted miscellaneous special revenue, that line there. That's the actual expenditure needed for the site build out, the leases, and the cost of the FTEs. So the combined expenditures there are $642,000 in fiscal year 22, and then $391,000 a year thereafter. And then there's also some revenues, as we discussed, from that inspection fee from the increased inspections, and the amount to general fund yearly would be $150,000 in the first year and $300,000 a year thereafter. $112,500 to the vehicle services account in the first year, fiscal year 23. And $225,000 a year thereafter. I just want to point out also the fiscal note assumes $8,000 in programming for their MinDrive system, but that those costs will be absorbed.
Ms. Boyd, what is the remaining balance in the, this is maybe stump you here, the vehicle service account after this withdrawal?
Madam Chair, I haven't done the math on that. I can tell you that the last account balance that I saw for the vehicle services account for fiscal year 22 was around 16 million. That was at the end of 2020. I saw those numbers. So there might be a slight update, but it should be in that ballpark.
Okay, good. I won't be draining it then. Good. Any questions, members? Senator Marty.
Madam Chair, not specifically about the fiscal note, but I'm wondering where the sites, the inspection sites are now and where the new ones would be.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not positive. I believe one is in the metro and the other one I believe is either in Rochester or Mankato in southern Minnesota. So there's a metro location and an outstate location. I believe it's in Mankato, but I may be incorrect on Rochester. And maybe someone on the Zoom call may know that.
I'm just curious, Madam Chair, where they are in the state, and because two more, I mean, I just was curious how many, how it was spread out.
And Madam Chair, just
Senator Jasinski.
a little bit to that point. So if you look on page 3 of 5 of the revised fiscal note, it says right now they're cannot do enough inspections and they're 6 months behind. So again, my question to this is this 4 full-time people actually adding to do the existing inspections or just for this bill? So again, there's a backlog, they said, of 6 months. So my question and our concern with the fiscal note is, are they backfilling these positions in my bill and the full-time employees to help resolve that backlog issue, or are they using the 4 full-time employees just for this portion of the bill?
Senator Jasinski, I'm looking at Krista Boyd. I don't think she can answer, but can you, Ms. Boyd?
I can. I'm just going to point out that for what it's worth, in the next paragraph of the fiscal note, the second paragraph at the top of page 3, the last sentence there says, assume this estimate includes only the impact of the increase due to the proposed legislation and does not address the current or future backlog in inspections. So I believe it's based, at least for this fiscal note, on the new inspection increase that will occur.
Senator Kif.
Yeah, Madam Chair, on the fiscal note as well, on page 3, again, it says, it looks like they're going to do a build-out, and one is the metro area, one is the west metro, and then there's one in the southern region. Now, it doesn't say exactly where, but it appears as though if those are build-outs, are they new locations? It appears as though from the fiscal note that might be the case because they're doing office furniture, computer equipment, and so on, one-time costs.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, I think that is either the Rochester or the Mankato location of that what they refer to the southern Minnesota, and I believe that is two new stations on top of what is existing now.
Good. Okay. Any further questions? Senator Jasinski, final comments, and we'll go to a vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for hearing the bill this morning. Sorry for the confusion in 3 different fiscal notes, but I hope the most recent one is accurate. We hope that. We have had some concern, as I've said. Senator Newman and myself did send a letter to Commissioner Harrington stating our concern with these fiscal notes coming back. One of the responses was it's different staff do different fiscal notes. Well, that brings my point is, are these fiscal notes accurate or not? Because if one person can come up with one number and a different staff person comes up with another number, where are these figures coming from? So that's our concern, but I think this is a great transparency bill, consumer protection. I know when I buy a car for my daughter, if I'm buying one of these vehicles, I want to make sure I know it has something wrong with it or has been through something. Not saying that I wouldn't buy it, but at least I'm aware of what it is and maybe do a little further deep check into what it was and what it may be and do another safety inspection. So I think it's a great bill, and thank you for hearing the bill this morning in finance.
Thank you, Senator Jasinski. Super. Senator Kif Meyer, would you like to make the motion?
Yes, Madam Chair, be glad to. I'll move Senate File 640 be recommended to pass and to be referred to general orders.
Thank you. On that motion, all those members say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion prevails.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, committee.
Thank you, Senator Jasinski. Members, I will make sure and give you a little more time to turn on your video and audio. I'm sorry. That was a rush there. Senator Weber. Senate File 1354. Good morning,
Good morning.
Senator Weber. Thank you for your patience.
You're welcome.
Senate File 1354, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a delete all amendment that I would like to have the bill put into the shape which I wish it to be.
And Senator Weber, is it the A5 amendment?
It is the A5 amendment, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair,
Senator Kif Meyer.
I will move the A5 amendment to Senate File 1354.
Senator Kif Meyer moves the A5 amendment to 1354. I think we'll wait until everyone has a chance to pull that up. It's in your packets. It should be online.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Botter.
if you want, I believe there may be a small change that the author wishes to incorporate into the amendment. You can do that without having to vote on it separately. I'm just making that option available.
Good. Oh, thank you, Mr. Botter. Yes, Senator Weber, is there a small change?
Pardon?
Oh, no.
Okay. No, I think at this point we'll proceed with the amended version as it is, and if there's other issues, we can deal with them separately.
Thank you, members. So on that motion from Senator Kif Meyer,
Madam Chair, if I may, before we go for a vote.
Senator Franzen.
Thank you, I apologize. I just wanted to be clear. There's 2 amendments posted. So are we doing a delete out and then an additional amendment? I'm just wanting to be clear on the order of these amendments, because normally you would have an author's delete all. You don't expect another amendment on top of that that's posted. And there's significantly changes to the original introduced bill. So I just want to be clear and just express my confusion on the process here and the transparency of this bill moving forward.
Thank you, Senator Franzen, for bringing that up. As you can tell, we're trying to navigate this a little bit. Senator Marty has the A6 amendment posted, and we are just working on the A5 amendment at this point, and we are not doing an oral amendment to the A5. So thank you for your patience with that. Okay. Senator Weber, we are going to go ahead and hear the A5 amendment, and then we'll vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Basically, the A5 amendment, well, maybe I should start out this way. The original bill was the governor's request for safe monies, and as we all know, that bill was defeated in the House last week. The delete all amendment changes the bill to provide a reduced amount of funding, also produces some changes in terms of how the proceeds will be put together, how they will be distributed, and what have you. And so that is the reason for this delete all amendment. And at this point, it's my understanding that nonpartisan council would be going through this particular amendment, Madam Chair?
Yes, that would be fine. And that would be Mr. Turner. Let's go to Mr. Backus.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
do we want to adopt this as the author's amendment so we're working to the bill instead of the amendment? Or do you want to do the amendment explanation?
You know what, since this is the first stop of this bill and an author's amendment, let's go ahead and take a vote on the A5 amendment, which is before you. All those in favor, Senator Kif Meyer moves the A5 amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay.
Aye. No.
The motion is adopted. Okay, Senator Weber. Now we will go to Senator Marty. Did you have a question? Oh, your hand is up.
I forgot to lower it. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. We'll go to whoever would like to review this A5 amendment. Mr. Backus, I would assume that's you at this point?
Yes, Madam Chair and members, I'll do the walkthrough. So the A5 amendment, first off, I'll point out that there is a detailed section-by-section summary, which I believe is in packets or publicly available. So Section 1 amends Chapter 12B, which is the State Disaster Release Assistance chapter. And this language is actually from Senate File 7, which is Senator Rosen's bill and is currently on general orders. Section 1 amends the definition of disaster in Chapter 12B and provides that a disaster does not include a catastrophe caused by civil disorder. This section is effective retroactively from January 1, 2020. Continuing then, Section 2 establishes an account in the Special Revenue Fund entitled the Law Enforcement Operations Account. Money in the account is appropriated to the Commissioner of Public Safety for reimbursement and management costs under the section. Section 5 transfers $15 million from the general fund into the account. So the section creates a program that authorizes reimbursements to tribal and local entities in Minnesota, and also any entity from another state, for specified costs relating to responding to unplanned or extraordinary public safety events. The types of eligible costs that can be reimbursed under the bill are overtime costs, costs related to logistical needs, incidental supplies, the backfill of personnel costs, costs for damaged equipment, emergency management, response planning, and threat mitigation costs, and then indemnification costs. The concept of public safety event is a defined term. It applies to unplanned or extraordinary public safety events that exhaust local resources, endanger life or property where local resources are inadequate to handle the situation, that require mutual aid, and that result in a state or local emergency being declared. The other type of public emergency or public event, safety event that it applies to is an extraordinary event or series of events whereby the state patrol makes a specific request to local law enforcement or local governmental units for assistance at a state-owned facility, including the state capitol. The bill kind of contemplates receiving jurisdictions and sending jurisdictions. A receiving jurisdiction is the jurisdiction in which the public safety event is actually taking place in their jurisdiction. So a receiving jurisdiction can be reimbursed up to 75% of their eligible costs under the bill. A sending jurisdiction is the jurisdiction that actually sends their personnel to assist the receiving jurisdiction for the event in the other jurisdiction. A sending jurisdiction can be reimbursed at 100% of their costs under the bill. It's important to point out that the actual decision-making process regarding reimbursements under the bill, and this is in subdivision 5, are to be made by a reimbursement panel. The panel consists of 5 members, 3 of whom are sheriffs appointed by a process created by the Minnesota Sheriff's Association, and then 2 of whom are police chiefs selected by the Minnesota Chiefs of Police Association. The rest of Section 2 addresses things like the application and the appeals process, requires applicants to keep detailed records and be subject to audits to ensure accountability. It requires the Department of Public Safety to maintain on their website a list of the recipients of reimbursements and the amount of reimbursements. Also authorizes the Department of Public Safety to retain up to 2.5% of the value of reimbursements that are awarded as management costs for the program. And then also applicants who recover eligible costs from other sources after receiving money under the program are required to reimburse essentially the general fund for those recovered costs. The entire section is sunsetted on June 30th, 2023. Continuing then, sections 3 and 4 of the amendment amend the effective dates of 2 provisions that were enacted last year in the Police Accountability Act. These 2 sections address the the use of deadly force by peace officers, and the effective dates are delayed by 6 months from March 1st, 2021 to September 1st, 2021. And then finally, Section 5 is the transfer language. It transfers $15 million from the general fund into this new account that's created in Section 2, and the money is made available until June 30th, 2023. And that's the amendment, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Backus. Mr. Backus, is there anything in this amendment that specifies that the governor cannot take money from this account to spend on anything else besides law enforcement?
Madam Chair, I don't think there's anything specific in the language.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions for Senator Weber or Mr. Backus? Senator Johnson?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Just quickly on 6.14, the effective date sunset. I'm just reading over this, so it might not be a relevant question, but this section is effective the day following final enactment and expires June 30th, 2023. That looks like the funding from other sources. Is this fund, does this fund expire on 2023, or is this an ongoing fund?
Senator Weber.
Madam Chair, Senator Johnson, this is, that would be the expiration of this fund. And if there are unused funds, monies within the fund at that point, they would then come back to the state, either the general fund or wherever you decide to take the money from.
Thank you. We do have a question, we do have Mr. Turner too, that can perhaps, but Senator Johnson, did you further question?
I think we're.
Okay. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Weber, does this contemplate any cost associated with the National Guard as well, or are those being covered separately?
Senator Weber.
Madam Chair, Senator Pratt, it is, we are constitutionally obligated to provide for the National Guard. Their cost would not be included in this.
Thank you.
Senator Marty. Yes, Senator Marty. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess Senator Weber, I have a lot of questions about this, but right now just a couple of them. One of which is your Section 1, where you're taking out the bill you've carried earlier, or somebody carried earlier, trying to exclude civil unrest. I assume a lot of other things like terrorism, anything like that that might fall in there. You're excluding that from the disaster fund. And then you're putting, some of those things would be covered by this new proposal that I just saw this morning, late last night, I guess I saw it. You're putting this new fund there, and then you're sunsetting this new fund. Who's going to take care of such expenses afterwards? And why separate out the funds?
Senator Weber.
Madam Chair, Senator Marty, I believe that the separating the funds and making that distinction in the disaster, of what a disaster is for the disaster relief account is important to note, because those funds were originally entitled for those natural disasters that can occur, whether it be tornado, windstorm, floods, et cetera, within the state of Minnesota. And as it relates to this account, if indeed it is determined that it is a worthwhile venture in going forth, I think that the legislature can address that issue at that particular time. Right now, we have been asked to provide funding for a situation that may develop as a result of the trials, much publicized trial that will happen in Minneapolis in next month. And I think that we are trying to respond to that particular issue. And like I said, if indeed it is determined that this is a worthwhile account and venture going forward, the legislature would have the opportunity to deal with it at a future time.
Madam Chair.
Senator Marty.
Senator Weber, I've never known the disaster account was meant for only the way you define it, and we can discuss at some point, but you are making permanent changes in that in exchange for a temporary fund to address some of this. And I'm not sure the logic of this. I get the sense that I haven't heard that you've consulted with the administration on this. I don't think you consulted with any DFLers. We get this, it was not the middle of the night, it was midnight, mid-evening when we see this amendment and don't know where it's coming from and wonder why we make these changes very quickly without consultation when I think we were having some bipartisan cooperation on trying to get this preparation for the trial next month and trying to prevent civil unrest.
Senator Weber, and then we'll have Senator Benson.
Madam Chair, Senator Marty, I think, quite frankly, that when we look at the fact that the governor took money out of the disaster relief account without consultation with the legislature, I don't know that we can claim that there was bipartisan effort going on addressing that issue. The request that he made to the legislature was to provide, as it relates to potential issues arising from the future trial, were made to the majority leader and all leaders in the legislature some time ago. He asked for basically a funding mechanism in order to provide for that, and that's what this bill is trying to do. As I stated, if indeed it is determined that this type of a program is worthwhile and it can be workable, then the legislature has the opportunity to make it permanent at some future time.
But Madam Chair,
Yes, Senator
Senator Weber, my objection isn't that this would be a temporary fund. It's that you're making a permanent change in the other one and making this sound like this is going to replace it when it's a temporary replacement and a permanent cancellation from the other fund.
Madam Chair,
Senator Weber.
Madam Chair, Senator Marty, there's no effort to say that these two funds are the same. What we're doing is clarifying within this bill, we're clarifying the disaster relief account and what is an allowable use for those funds. And this is a new fund that we're setting up to address the issues that the governor has asked us to address.
Senator Benson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Senator Marty's point, and then I'll revert to my question. I remember when the disaster relief account was created, it was for, it was particularly after flooding and the legislature continually having to get called in to resolve not small issues, but we thought, governor could use his judgment to help those communities in an expedited way. And during that debate, no one ever raised civil disorder. We're looking at definitions, prohibitions on Section 609, which is not a natural disaster. That's a section of statute that we've defined, and it fits within the jurisdiction of the Judiciary Committee, so therefore foreseeable and actions by people, not by nature. The disaster relief account was for the fire in Madelia, Madam Chair, grain elevator explosions, the floods in Duluth, that's what we talked about. The governor went beyond that. I don't know why, but now the governor has changed his mind about how to take care of civil disorder, civil unrest, and he has asked for advanced funding for a foreseeable event. And so Senator Weber is trying to clarify the legislative judgment as it refers to the disaster account, but also meet the governor's request for preparing for foreseeable risk related to the Chauvin trial. And so these two things aren't directly related, as Senator Weber said, but it is an opportunity for us to clarify that they are two very different kinds of actions. But Madam Chair, and maybe Mr. Backus can help me, on page 6, line 13, I'm sorry, yes, line 13, the commissioner must deposit any repayment into the general fund. Why wouldn't we have payments going back to the law enforcement operations account?
Mr. Backus?
Madam Chair and Senator Benson, that is a decision point for the members to make. This is how the request came in. It's up to the legislature how you want to do this.
Mr. Turner, how much is in the law enforcement operations account at this point? if you could. Welcome to the committee, Mr. Turner.
Yes, Madam Chair. Because the count hasn't been created yet, there's
that's right.
nothing in the law enforcement. The bill would transfer $15 million from the general fund into the account.
Okay, and there is a sunset on that of 2023, so that's why we probably want to relook at that.
Madam Chair, I would like to request council give me language that on page 6, line 13, deleted the words general fund and inserted law enforcement operations account, if that's the correct amendment, if council could assist.
Mr. Backus? Or Mr. Bonner?
Madam Chair, yes, I think that would be the amendment if you, on line 6.13, delete general fund and insert law enforcement operations account. I believe that would take care of it.
Senator Benson, could I ask you the reasoning behind this?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the opportunity, and I'll respect Senator Weber's decision, but I think this is an important conversation. If we're going to establish the fund and money is going out of that fund, the general principle is if funds are returned, it should be returned to the fund of origin in case there are ongoing needs. And yes, this does expire in 2023, but if there are other events that we are not contemplating at this moment, we might need these funds for other purposes. And it would also give the legislature the opportunity to have funds available if they decided to extend this fund for some reason. Now, if the author's intent is to have this wash back into the general fund so that the account balance is diminished, I respect that that is a finance decision and we can debate it. But I think if we're going to establish a fund, any funds that go out of it should return to it. That's just a finance principle that I hold and would like debated today.
Senator Weber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Senator Benson, I would be okay with that amendment. I believe that, quite frankly, with the sunset and with the fact that any unused funds at that point would come back to the general fund, if we hereby increase the balance in the law enforcement operation fund as a result of outside monies having come in for to compensate entities for their costs, yes, I would be fine with that amendment.
Further discussion on the oral amendment.
Would you restate?
Mr. Bodden? Yes, is this an oral amendment? Mr. Bodden?
Madam Chair, yes, it is. I think Mr. Backus should restate it. I've been working on a different amendment. Just want to make sure he gets it right.
Okay. Mr. Backus?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, members. Page 6, line 13, delete general fund and insert law enforcement operations account.
Further questions, comments on this oral amendment?
Madam Chair, to the amendment.
Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Thank you. Could someone refresh my memory, maybe Mr. Turner or whoever, with regards to the incidents that happened last summer? And obviously that's what we're talking about here, trying to prevent something like that from happening. Were there dollars recovered from the federal government to offset those costs, or where were the dollars coming from that would come from other than the state of Minnesota?
Madam Chair, I don't know. Madam Chair?
Senator Champion?
The only reason why I'm interrupting is because it is my understanding that that we're on an oral amendment, and the question that has been put forward does not seem to apply to the oral amendment that's under consideration.
Senator Ingebrigtsen, are you working your way to a comment on the oral amendment?
Well, yes. We're talking about recovering money. If there's going to be recovering money, I want to know if there was any recovered last year. I heard that there were some federal dollars that were possibly recovered to the Minneapolis Police Department for the city of Minneapolis for their expenses. We're talking about recovering dollars going back into the account. Where would they come from other than the state?
Senator Champion?
Madam Chair, that explanation has no connection, and there's no nexus to the discussion that is before the body, because the oral amendment seems to want to talk about the money that we take from the general fund and go into this special account, and then others can solicit it, and then once that money is used, or any unused portion of that, right now, according to the bill, is to go back into the general fund.
Well, Senator Champion, you're cutting out there.
With federal funds, that has nothing to do with. Oh, sorry about that. It has nothing to do with federal funds and has nothing to do with any money that was received by a city. So, Madam Chair, I just think that seems to be far removed from the order of business.
Well, thank you, Senator Champion. I think I am going to allow this line of questioning because in subdivision 13, where this oral amendment is going to occur, it does talk about the repayment required, and there is a correlation as far as where that money is going to go. What happens if there is some federal reimbursement? Where would that money go? So if I am going to allow Senator Ingebrigtsen or an answer to Senator Ingebrigtsen's question.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I could
Senator
again,
Ingebrigtsen.
just a point of clarity. I mean, there has been discussion about money coming back to whatever group or whatever city or county needs this, because this is a statewide bill. So if the money comes back and it replenishes the fund, it goes back in to replenish the fund. I guess I would like to know if that did happen previously, and if it did, that's fine. If it didn't, that's fine too. But we're talking about putting the money back into the fund. So what kind of money, whose money is that going to be?
Mm-hmm. Okay, Mr. Backus?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm sorry, could Senator Ingebrigtsen repeat the question? I was looking somewhere else at the moment.
Maybe I could answer that question, Madam Chair.
Oh, yes, Mr. Turner, thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Senator Ingebrigtsen. As far as I know, from the disturbances of last summer, there was no federal disaster declaration money because the disaster request was denied. So I don't know, I don't believe there's been any federal money flowing to the city of Minneapolis. Now, the governor under Chapter 12B has declared a disaster and has set aside, I believe, it's $12 million, I think, in estimated costs. I don't know if any of that has been released yet, but that's the only money that's come into Minneapolis that I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm. Right, from the disaster account, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, was that from the disaster account? That was for COVID, I believe, wasn't it?
No, Senator Ingebrigtsen, it was for Minneapolis alone.
Oh, okay, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
So,
Well,
Madam Chair,
yes, Senator Benson.
Perhaps to tighten this down from Senator Ingebrigtsen's point, if a community was reimbursed federally or from another source, they would only be reverting to the law enforcement operations account the amount that they drew from the law enforcement operations account. So this account wouldn't be netting up to an amount greater than what was distributed from the account.
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, and further comments on this oral amendment? If you could just wave at me or something. So there's several hands up here. Okay, we are going to take a vote. Members, unmute on video. All, Senator, or
Madam Chair, I'll move the oral amendment as stated by staff to Senate File 1354, the A5 amendment.
thank you, Senator Kif Meyer. Mr. Backus, could you restate the motion?
Yes, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Page 6, line 13, delete general fund and insert law enforcement operations account.
Okay. On that motion from Senator Kif Meyer, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
No.
No. No.
Motion prevails. Amendment is adopted. Okay. It's a little clunky, but we're getting there. It's a little practice. Senator Kent, you're up next. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a lot in this delete all amendment. As Senator Marty pointed out, this amendment came forward late last night. We've had a lot of conversation as the legislature this year because of COVID and because of the challenges of trying to have stakeholders and the public have access, and with it, we should be making a good faith effort to make sure that this information is provided on a timely basis so that stakeholders can be aware. I ran across it at 9:30 last night. I think this is not the way to do things, and I just wanted to clarify that point for the record. I also want to make a point, because I know we're not allowing testimony in this committee, but Senate File 7, which I know is your bill, Madam Chair, which is on the floor. It's on general orders, so it doesn't need to be in this delete all amendment. There was, as I understood it during, I believe, the Judiciary Committee, significant opposition to this language. And so I just wanted to share for the record for this committee, since we can't hear from these organizations themselves, that there were letters submitted by the League of Minnesota Cities, the Association of Minnesota Counties, the Minnesota Intercounty Association, and a number of emergency managers across the state who opposed this language. So I just wanted to share that point. And I know letters were distributed. I have copies of them. I think it would be worthwhile for those to be made available in this committee as well, since we're hearing the same language. But what I really wanted to focus on in terms of my question here is on page 6 and sections 3 and 4. These are delaying the implementation of important language regarding the use of deadly force that was passed during a special session in July of 2020 after significant and meaningful bipartisan work to pass these important measures. Badly needed, an important step for the state of Minnesota. And so my question to Senator Weber is, why does this delay need to be implemented now?
Senator Weber, did you hear that last question? Because I did not. Senator Kent, could you mention that again?
Why do we need to change the dates on these important provisions about the use of deadly force for Minnesotans?
Senator Weber.
Madam Chair, Senator Kent, quite frankly, that extension of that date is another result of the COVID situation. The officers have not been able to have the type of person-to-person training that that legislation required as a result of COVID restrictions, and therefore they have asked for this extension in order that they may get that training in.
Senator Kent? No? Okay. I would like to respond, though, Senator Kent, to your comments about the Senate File 7 in judiciary. And yes, there was opposition. I know there was opposition because of the retroactive date. We could discuss all day long whether that disaster account was created for civil disorder. And I agree, I firmly believe that it was not the intent of the authors, whether it was Senator Cohen or Representative Pawlowski, to have it paid for civil unrest or civil disorder. It was paid for natural disasters. And that's what this bill, this A5 amendment, is clarifying. And it was the retroactive date that was the big red target in that bill in judiciary, too. So Senator Kif Meyer is next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In regards to this particular section, I think you just said very well, actually, what I was going to say, which had more to do with the natural disasters. And if we start including civil unrest into tornadoes, high water, tidal waves, earthquakes, volcanic landslide, mudslide, snowstorm, this fund only has so much money into it. And so we're going to dilute it by widening and broadening what can go come out of that account. I think it's really, really important for Minnesotans, especially in our state. These things do happen. I want to be sure that it's protected. But this account, disaster account, reimburses a wide range of local units of government. The law enforcement operations account is very specific to law enforcement and very specific to the unique needs in this kind of situation, which has not happened before here in Minnesota. So I think distinguishing these two protects the very important things for the state of Minnesota that are natural disasters and preserves it for that. I think it's a very appropriate way of handling these two separate issues, and they are distinct and separate. Never should have come out of the disaster account to begin with, but that having happened, I think on a go-forward basis, that is certainly appropriate. But I think this is a really good way to do it and justifies seeing these things being handled in two separate ways, two very distinct needs. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Kif Meyer. Senator Champion.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and sorry it took a little bit for me to push the right buttons here. So, Madam Chair, I have a couple questions. One is I noticed that by reading this delete all amendment that it had a number of issues, which seems to go far afield from what the governor asked us for. And Senator Weber earlier in his discussion said that he was attempting to respond to the governor's question, and this would be the response. Well, I don't think the governor asked us anything about use of force. I don't think the governor asked us to do anything around mutual aid or kicking our friends when they're down. He said, here's a situation that I would like for us to address that's very narrow. So my first question is, Senator Weber, did you receive a correspondence from the governor that suggested that he should deal with use of force and whether the timelines should be pushed out as a part of dealing with whether revenue should be provided for our friends as they're dealing with the upcoming, safety issues?
Senator Weber.
Madam Chair and Senator Champion, I have not had communication with the governor. The governor had originally made the request to leadership, and this bill has come down through that chain, and quite frankly, the original the bill that was defeated in the House, the other body, did have language in it that talked about some of the additional law enforcement issues, and as it relates to this deadline, quite frankly, it is in my opinion, a reasonable request in light of the circumstances under which all of us have been operating for almost a year, to recognize that the impossibility of the type of training that needs to take place in order to comply with those with the legislation that was passed in special session, and so therefore that's why this has been included in this bill.
And Senator Weber, I just would like to remind everybody, the governor's bill did fail in the House.
And
so,
Madam Chair,
Senator Benson.
I think it's important.
Hold on, Senator Champion. Senator Champion, hold on. I'm just going to refer to Senator Benson quickly.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay.
I think it's important for people to remember we are not scribes for the governor. When he asks us for something, he should expect a response that reflects our priorities as well. And so this is how work gets done in the executive branch, the legislative branch, and then is interpreted by the judiciary. It's not our job to write down what he'd like and pass it.
Senator Champion.
Madam Chair, I just want to be clear because the way things have gone in our committee historically is that if there's a senator who's speaking to an issue that they could get their questions out, I've never been in a situation where so much deference is given to another member even while one member is speaking. And I'd just like to raise that so that you, as our wonderful chair, can really think through that, because that appears to be an ongoing issue. Every time someone makes a comment on our side, there seems to be deference in where Senator Benson is able to interject even while we're talking and trying to get our questions answered. And so I recognize that that we are the legislative body. I was responding to something that Senator Weber said, and one of the things that we've often talked about is working together. How do we work together in order to make sure that we're looking out for for Minnesotans? And so when I know that there was a lot of emotion and energy put forward when we were on the floor after the George Floyd murder, where it was for hours that we debated this issue. And that if we were going to revisit it, I think it would have been nice for Senator Weber or Senator Gazelka or for anyone to at least say, hey, what do you guys think about this because of this COVID issue or whatever it is? But that didn't happen. And we're members of the body. We're not the administration. And this is a very serious issue. So to that point, Senator Weber, do you have any concerns that if there's peaceful protest that happens, that the police will be too aggressive and therefore use force unreasonably and therefore put us in a like situation that we find ourselves nationally and internationally around the unreasonable use of force that was yielded upon George Floyd?
Senator Weber, and I'm not quite sure the line of questioning on this either, Senator Champion. I think we are leaving, we're going far afield of what is happening here in this bill. And before Senator Weber answers, I do want to apologize if you feel like you were cut off. This is a struggle, members, to be in a hybrid hearing. And of course, it's every senator's choice whether they show up or not. But we have our 5 members here, 5 out of the 6, and I'm doing my very best to make sure that it is fair and equal for everyone. So my apologies, Senator Champion, if you felt you were cut off or that the minority has been cut off. That is not the intent at all. But it is like being an air traffic controller up here. There's a lot going on and trying to make this fair. If Senator Weber, if you'd like to answer that question for Senator Champion.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Senator Champion. I think that everyone is aware of the actions that precipitated the civil unrest last spring, and I believe that. And I do not believe that every police officer would have acted in the same manner, and I am not here to cast judgment on anyone. That is for the courts to determine. And I do believe that at this point in time, we have to recognize the restrictions that have been placed on everyone, quite frankly, within the past year, but also on those law enforcement officials as it relates to the training. I think that at the end of the day, there are many eyes that have been opened as a result of what happened last year. I think there is a sincere desire to do better, and obviously, hopefully training will help in that regard. But no one had control of the situation that has kept person-on-person training from occurring, and as a result of that, that's why this extension of that date is included in this bill. And I think that I have visited with some folks from the law enforcement agencies. They very much wanted to have this done in the time that had been allotted to them. And they are also recognizing that certainly whatever actions they may need to take in the upcoming weeks are certainly going to be under the microscope, and they will, I believe, respond in the manner in which we all expect them to respond.
And my last question, Madam Chair, Madam Chair, I want you to know how much respect that you know that I have for you, and I just wanted to make sure I, in a sincere way, elevated a concern that I was having, and so I thank you for your words. The last thing that I'll say is that, Madam Chair, I hope that you will reconsider the notion around the retroactivity, where there was a lot of opposition in the judiciary. I believe what is true, and I did hear Senator Kif Meyer read and say what was the intent at that time. We know that reasonable minds can disagree. Reasonable people can disagree. But I don't think that it's advantageous to put our cities and to put our fellow Minnesotans in a situation that is problematic. And I believe this retroactivity will in fact do so. And I just hope that you'll reconsider that because I think that is problematic. So thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Weber, for just engaging me, even though I do think that this bill is very problematic and is not something that I think that we should embrace at this time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Champion, and thank you for those final comments. I believe we all have to have a little patience with this situation that we are in at this point. Senator Marty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to get back to something because I keep hearing it from several members of the majority, and that is about the intent of Chapter 12B. They're talking about, well, it was never intended to be for this purpose, only for natural disasters. And they can rightly point out that in 12B, it does point to natural or, let's see, it does list a bunch of disaster, means any catastrophe, including but not limited to, and then lists a number of them. And the ones listed there tend to be natural ones. But nowhere anywhere in 12B does it use the word natural. And you look at Chapter 12, the one right before it, the one that's talking about our policies towards emergencies and natural disasters and other disasters. It talks about the findings the legislature enacted in there was the possibility, existing and increasing possibility of the occurrence of natural and other disasters. That's the only place we mention natural disasters, to say natural and other disasters. And if you look at the rest of Chapter 12, what about nuclear harm? We've got an entire couple of sections on nuclear emergency response. Those aren't, quote, natural disasters. Yet I think the assumption that now we're going back, and because it did list some natural disasters and said including but not limited to this, I don't know why we're taking out things like nuclear disasters, why we're taking out riots, why we're taking out terrorism, why we're taking out anything else, because they're, quote, not natural. I have a real problem because I think we're redefining what some members of the committee are saying. We intended this back then. Well, I was in the legislature back then. I didn't intend that, and it doesn't say that in there. So how we tighten what we passed before and say that was always what our intent was. I'm very troubled by that. Has nothing to do with the situation we are trying to address, presumably in this bill, and that is to make sure that the state is prepared, that our law enforcement agencies are prepared for an event that we hope doesn't happen, but that we're concerned about civil unrest, want to be prepared for this. And so I still don't get why keep harping on the fact that we got to limit what we passed 8 years ago, 7 years ago, and try and say that we only intended it to be natural disasters. And if so, why do we mention things the chapter before it, the disasters chapter? Why do we mention nuclear disaster? Because we're afraid we've got some nuclear plants, something might go wrong. So let's not limit some other law that has nothing to do with this when we're trying to pass something quickly before civil unrest could occur, and we hope it doesn't, but we want to have our law enforcement and our cities and communities well prepared. So I think we should focus on that and throw out the other extraneous stuff and deal with that in some other debate.
Thank you, Senator Marty. Senator Kent?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to go back again on the same section, section 1, to your point about the fact that some of the debate was about the retroactivity, and it is still in here, so that opposition would still remain on that point. But as I review these letters from the League of Minnesota Cities, municipalities and other governmental units are at risk of experiencing disastrous events affecting their communities beyond natural disasters. And they go on, the Association of Minnesota Counties, to change the definition of state-declared disasters and exclude civil unrest could lead to extreme hardships for counties. And they continue, the Minnesota Inter-County Association statutory definition defines disaster consistent with the Federal Stafford Act and lists several causes, and then, quote, regardless of cause, because our disaster law is strongly built on the federal statute. So, I just want to set that record straight. Again, they can't be here to testify and share their views themselves, but I think it's important to be clear on what they have said. But I want to go back to some of what Senator Marty was saying, because I think aside from some of these more narrow arguments about these provisions, the purpose of the SAFE account has to do with public safety and preparedness for the future. And we are trying to work together. I think that the way this amendment is being handled is not conducive to working together to reach a good solution for the people of Minnesota. But it is about being prepared and about keeping Minnesotans safe and our important assets safe in the future. This language in Section 1 is purely about damages. And those are conversations we can and should have, but linking them is just not appropriate. As I said, Senate File 7 has already passed onto the floor. We will continue having that debate. We can continue having those discussions. But this is about protecting Minnesotans moving forward. And I think that it is unwise and not in good faith to link these things together. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kent. And Senator Weber, you don't act like you need to respond to either. Okay, we'll just keep going, and if you do, please let me know. Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank Senator Weber for bringing this forward. There's been a lot of discussion going on here about planning for what we think might be an issue. And where it's going to be funded from. I brought this up earlier. I think I brought it up earlier. I know the bill hasn't had a lot of discussion, but I'm wondering if it's okay to just go ahead and not plan anything. Let the law enforcement do their planning. Law enforcement's got it taken care of, and we'll deal with the finances. Should something happen, hopefully it doesn't. Maybe that's what we should be doing. Maybe we shouldn't be doing any financial preparing. I'm kind of hearing that a little bit. So Senator Weber, I really appreciate you bringing this forward. It's quite frankly over and above. And I still wonder why we're sometimes doing this. Let things happen that are going to happen, and deal with it later. Cops are cops. They're not going to not work. They're not going to not do public safety. So I guess we could do nothing at all and still move on. But that's not the way to resolve this, it seems. But it seems people are having problems. And then with regards to Bobby Champion's remarks as to how the police are going to operate and how they're going to act, I think that question was out of line. We don't know that. They're going to act professional as they can. We're dredging up old things that are actually going to be going on trial pretty soon. Let's leave that out of the discussion. We care about public safety. That's why we're here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Ingebrigtsen. Senator Kent, and then I believe Senator Marty has an amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To Senator Ingebrigtsen's point, first of all, I think it's worth pointing out that law enforcement definitely supports the safe account, that we need to do this, that they see this as important in terms of being prepared. So, you know, I think it's irresponsible to say, let's just chuck this whole thing and hopefully everything will be okay, because that's not responsible planning. And what I would point to in that is if you look at the very good planning that was done around the time of the inauguration, when there were a number of concerns and threats around the Capitol and different points in St. Paul, that was well planned, it was well organized, and the crowds that were expected to be here and to potentially create civil unrest, if you will, and potentially be dangerous and pose a public safety risk, they didn't show up because of the preparedness. On the other hand, if you look at Washington, D.C. on January 6th, where there was not preparedness, we had a very, very different and deadly outcome that was particularly hurtful to law enforcement. So I would just say that I think the intent of the SAFE account and the work that we need to continue doing on this in good faith is important, and planning and is needed and responsible to the people of Minnesota, and particularly to those who would be defending our communities and protecting us and keeping us safe. I remember as a kid the lines on law enforcement vehicles to protect and serve, and that's what we're asking them to do, and that's what they're supporting in this language. And I think we should support responsible planning and preparedness.
To that point, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Kent. Senator Ingebrigtsen?
Real quickly, to that point, she made my point. I didn't hear the governor or any law enforcement units come to the legislature to prepare for the good job that they did at our state capitol. That's my whole point. They know how to do this. They're prepared. I mean, they know how to react to this. And there was no coming to the capitol for asking for money for that, and it worked fine. And maybe that's just what we should do. Thank you.
Senator Kent. Okay. Senator Marty?
Madam Chair, I was going to make a similar point to what Senator Kent did, and I think it's important to follow up on this. Senator Ingebrigtsen, the difference between what happened here in Minnesota at the state capitol, where they were prepared and they didn't come to us for more money because they didn't feel a need for it, and what happened in Washington, where they were not prepared and people died as a result. Well, let's try and do what they're asking. In this case, we have law enforcement and the administration, the people who put together the planning, the ones who protected our Capitol in January, saying we need to prepare for this. We need help. They're asking for the help, and you're saying, in effect, which strikes me as strange. I mean, it's the opposite of the Boy Scout motto: be prepared. No, let's say, well, those guys can prepare, and if they're not ready for it, well, then they'll come ask us. Well, they have been saying they need help. They want us to help prepare. That's why the administration, that's why the Department of Public Safety, that's why law enforcement is saying we should be doing this. We should be setting aside money. We should be helping them prepare. And we don't have a lot of time, so we ought to prepare now. I just don't get this idea that, oh, somebody else will take care of it. No, that's what happened in Washington, D.C. They weren't prepared. And here, our law enforcement at state and local level folks are saying we got to be prepared and help us, and we need some funds set aside. We need to plan. And they're working together. They're working to prepare for this, but they're saying we need help, and this is the help we can do as a legislature. And I simply don't see any excuse for not doing that. I'm very troubled by that.
Senator Ingebrigtsen, to that, and then I have an oral amendment I'd like to make, please.
Madam Chair, I mean, we can argue, I guess, all day long, but it seemed to me halfway through this committee meeting that the other party was not interested in moving forward with Senator Weber's bill. That's the point I'm making here. Either we do get some money here and get it to the front lines real quick, or we do nothing at all and pay for it later. The bottom line is the public, I think, will still be protected. I think law enforcement knows how to get ready. Paying for the contracts and all that, I get that. I understand that. If you're going to call on other agencies, they will come. They did before. But the point is, it appears that what we're doing isn't enough. Then I say, let's not do anything. But I do support Weber's bill.
Thank you, Senator Ingebrigtsen. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since our motives were questioned there, I feel a need to respond. The point is, we do support this effort of putting together a safe account. The problem is that we spent a lot of time in the Senate focusing on an LGA bill that would not accomplish what we need, that would be divisive and not support meaningful mutual aid. We have this amendment come through at the last minute, which throws in a whole bunch of things that we believe are irrelevant and detrimental to this process. So if we want to have a good faith effort to focus on preparedness and safety and planning, we should do that. But our point is that what's being done here goes far afield of that, and that's our objection. So thank you very much. I hope we can get back to a good faith conversation about what's good for the people of Minnesota.
Thank you, Senator Kent. And I do think we're having a very good conversation. I do want to remind members that the governor's bill did fail in the House. And so this is the part we are working that way. I know there's going to be a tremendous amount of conversation and work over the weekend. So this path is not complete yet. And I see Senator Weber does not want to comment on that, but I am going to offer an oral amendment, members. And with that, it is on, if y'all have your page 2, line 20, after the period, I'd like to insert money appropriated under this subdivision may be spent only for a reimbursement recommended by the panel established under subdivision 5 and for the expenses authorized under subdivision 12. And members, the reason for that is, again, I do not want the opportunity or the opportunity for the governor or anyone else to come in and steal this account from the law enforcement operations account that is so critical to make sure that we are prepared ongoing. So again, it reads, money appropriated under the subdivision may be spent only for a reimbursement recommended by the panel established under subdivision 5 and for the expenses authorized under subdivision 12. Mr. Bodden.
Madam Chair, I think Mr. Backus just shared he's been listening to this and we've been talking about this amendment. He may have a suggestion here for a minor change that might be needed to this amendment. So if you can call on him, we've been working on that language.
Yes, Mr. Backus.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair and members, and sorry to jump in. I think if you reworded it just a tiny bit and you inserted money appropriated under this subdivision may be spent only for a reimbursement recommended by the reimbursement panel, because that's a defined term in the amendment, and for the expenses authorized under subdivision 12. So we're simply changing the panel established under subdivision 5.
Okay, thank you. So I will read that again, members. I move the oral amendment on page 2, line 20, after the period, money appropriated under this subdivision may be spent only for reimbursement recommended by the reimbursement panel established under subdivision 5 and for the expenses authorized under subdivision 12.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
I have a question, Madam Chair.
Excuse me, Senator Champion, I'm going to go to Mr. Backus first.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Madam Chair. I mean, this is just really technical, but yeah, no, it would be only for a reimbursement recommended by the reimbursement panel, and for the expenses authorized under subdivision 12. That would be the change.
Mr. Backus, read that again, please.
Madam Chair, I'll read the entire amendment. So on page 2, line 20, after the period, insert money appropriated under this subdivision may be spent only for a reimbursement recommended by the reimbursement panel and for the expenses authorized under subdivision 12.
Okay. I so move that oral amendment. Now, I did have Senator Franzen up, but Senator Champion, who would like to go first on this one?
I'm a gentleman and a scholar, so I'll defer to Senator Franzen.
Thank you.
Senator Franzen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to clarify the amendment, that would be the $15 million that was put into that fund. That's my first clarification, or what's the amount that is in that fund. And second, the panel, we haven't even talked about what that panel's composition. So I'd like to have that discussion with Senator Weber. Who is making these decisions? Why is it folks that are listed in this amendment? Because we're talking about getting all perspectives and working together. But if it's only sheriffs that are magically bound to be part of this panel, I just don't see it as being very transparent. And I get it, they get elected too, but again, we haven't been part of this process to establish this big change in how we distribute funds for this account that was just put in place by this last minute amendment. So I'm trying to follow the logic, and I want to know the background. You did say, Senator Weber and Madam Chair, that you had been discussing with some law enforcement. Can you elaborate how this panel got to be and how did you end up drafting it the way you are drafting it? Why is it not including more perspectives? I have other questions on the bill, but for this amendment, I'll leave those two for starters.
Thank you, Senator Franson. And it's for the $15 million in the law enforcement operations account. And as far as the composition of the panel, that's on page 3, line 28. I will defer to Senator Weber for the rest of the answers on your questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Senator Franzen. Basically, the panel would consist of 3 sheriffs and 2 police chiefs. That would be picked by their respective associations. And it shows that there would be high population areas and lower population areas that would be represented within those 5 individuals. Law enforcement personnel were selected as that group that could evaluate the requests that came in for reimbursement. They understand the costs that are involved. They understand all the elements that are involved in that particular situation. And we felt that they are the ones that could say, yes, this is a valid claim. No, this is not a valid claim. And provide reasoning, substantial reasoning for it. And so I think that that is a reasonable request, and I think that that provides a reasonable panel to evaluate those reimbursement requests.
So,
Senator Franson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I know we're running out of time, but I just think this is just important as well to discuss. And maybe we need to table the bill until another hearing, because there's so many questions that I think are still needing to be raised in this limited time. But for this particular aspect, are we assuming that the only funds that would be reimbursed are public safety? Because if you have an unrest or a natural disaster, it goes beyond public safety. It goes, and I would imagine county administrators or city administrators or managers might be equipped with that information more than sheriffs. Sheriffs might be a part of the reimbursement equation, but not all. So is this limited just to public safety reimbursement and defined in this amendment as just law enforcement? Or are we also limiting how we're going to address unrest or disasters, natural disasters, nuclear disasters, by just the public safety component? And I just want to be clear before
Senator
voting.
Weber.
Madam Chair and Senator, this is relating to public safety events. This review panel, reimbursement panel, would not have any jurisdiction as it relates to natural disasters or any other type of event that would occur.
Senator Franson. Okay. Senator Ingebrigtsen.
But, Madam Chair, I think maybe Senator Weber cleared that up pretty well. To Senator Franzen's point, if it were an infrastructure disaster, if it was something to do with roads or bridges, I would want MnDOT on there making those decisions, not law enforcement. So I think, yeah, sheriffs and chiefs are very responsible for their communities, and I think they understand it way better than anybody else. I do understand the concern of not having a city administrator or somebody at least looking at it, and they will actually. I'm sure that's where it'll eventually end up. But I'm sure that's why I think the senators put that in there.
Thank you, Senator Ingebrigtsen. Senator Marty, and we do have an oral amendment before us. Senator Marty, is this on?
After the amendment, I'm sorry, for what we still had that.
Okay, thank you very much. Further discussion on Senator Rosen's oral amendment. Please turn your video on, audio on. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion prevails. Amendment is adopted. Senator Marty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The last discussion, which I forgot was related to that amendment, but the discussion between Senator Ingebrigtsen and Senator Weber clarified again the whole point. The reason we should be focusing only, if this bill is only to provide funding for law enforcement for an event that may occur in the next month or so, we ought to be addressing it and not bringing in all the other things like, again, going back to Section 1 of the bill. The League of Cities, the counties, cities and counties are clearly stating they didn't like that. They don't like that. And Senator Weber just a minute ago said, well, this is just for the law enforcement. It doesn't deal with anything else. The refinery explosion, fire in Superior, no, it wouldn't deal with something like that if that was in Duluth. It wouldn't deal with things like the bombing that occurred in Nashville at Christmas. It wouldn't address any of those things. And that's why the League of Cities and their thing talks about their concerns about disastrous events affecting communities beyond natural disasters, whether civil disturbances, industrial catastrophes, or other disastrous events. They may result in unbudgeted and unfunded costs relating to cleanup, repairs, social and economic recovery, infrastructure restoration, et cetera. And we're already providing that in the other fund. And now this bill, for no good reason, totally unrelated to what the purpose of the bill is, allegedly, and should be, and that is that we're going to limit that and say you can't use it for industrial catastrophes or other disturbances. You can't use it for anything else. So we're going to cut out a huge chunk of our emergency preparedness in order to maybe provide a little bit of preparedness here. And I had an amendment, but it's not worth offering because the majority keeps pointing out that the governor's bill in the House did not pass. Well, this bill is not ready for passing either, and it's too many things to fix in this right now. I suggest we send it to Judiciary or some other committee, have them start taking a look at it, because we don't have a lot of time, but working together with the administration and with both parties, we might have a chance of addressing this. But I mean, I still find sections 3 and 4 that I think Senator Kent raised earlier. I understand it doesn't take a lot of training to implement a public policy that the legislature adopted last summer, namely that we want to protect life, that we want to protect people from harm. And the section 3 is deleting legislative intent, that the legislature finds and declares the following: that the authority to use deadly force conferred on peace officers by this section is a critical responsibility that shall be exercised judiciously and with respect to human rights and dignity and the sanctity of every human life. The legislature further finds and declares that every person has a right to be free from excessive force by officers acting under color of law. And it's really ironic that when we're concerned about civil unrest related to the trial of an officer who, in the allegations and what we've seen and so on, may have used deadly force in a totally inappropriate situation. And here we're going to take away the legislative findings that that's wrong. We're actually saying at this trial, I don't see why that should be in a bill talking about how we're going to prepare law enforcement for coming events. I don't see what the connection is. That's why I don't think this bill is, my little amendment wouldn't have done much to change this. That's why I think we should send this bill to another committee where they can have public testimony, where they can hear from law enforcement and from local governments and from all the people involved in this, because this bill is clearly not ready for prime time. If the House bill wasn't fully ready and they didn't have votes to put through what they had, this one's not close to that. And maybe you got the votes, but it's not ready.
Thank you, Senator Marty. Senator Benson.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm seeking clarification. Senator Marty says we're prohibiting the disaster relief account from dealing with industrial catastrophes. Could he point to that language, please?
Senator Marty.
Madam, let's see. Madam Chair, I am looking at this. I've been going by I did not look at that right now today because that was the other day's bill, and civil disorder. Okay, so you are saying you think it would cover industrial catastrophes, because I keep hearing you say it means, and we intended there, natural catastrophes. And industrial catastrophes or explosions from bombers or anything else, to me, aren't natural, and therefore your terminology when you're saying it was intended only for natural catastrophes, your language may not do that. Your rhetoric is saying that, so I apologize if I was confusing your rhetoric for what's actually in the bill there. But I don't think it would cover, I don't think you can argue it would cover somebody bombing something.
Madam Chair, Senator Marty is correct. It would specifically prohibit, well, actually, the prohibition would be civil disorder, public disturbance involving acts of violence by assemblages of 3 or more people. So an individual bomber would not be covered. It has to cause immediate danger or results in damage or injury to property or persons of another individual. So if a single person, such as the individual in Memphis, blew up something in Minnesota, that would still be allowed to be treated as a disaster. But if 3 or more people assembled with intent and caused harm, they would be guilty of gross misdemeanors and therefore prohibited from that relief happening in our disaster account. But there is this other fund then could help law enforcement do the work that they needed to do related to that. But there's nothing in this language that prohibits responding to a nuclear accident or an industrial fire. It is very specific. Subdivision 2.
So, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Benson. Senator Marty.
Madam Chair, Senator Benson, what you are acknowledging is that all the arguments I've been hearing earlier today and on Senate File 7, I guess it was earlier, was that this was because it was only intended for natural disasters. I've heard that term used many times, and now you're saying, well, no, we do intend for if there's a nuclear accident or if there's an explosion or even a bombing or things like that, then it is intended to cover that. But if it's, you were parsing the words to say, well, if a single bomber did, it would be covered, and if 3 or more people bombed, it wouldn't be covered. That's bizarre. I mean, why do we want to say we're going to have disaster funds? We're going to cover this, but because there are more bombers here, we're not going to cover that. I mean, what's the logic behind that? And why is that in this bill? You can push that bill for...
Madam Chair and Senator Marty, perhaps then you want to redefine civil disorder to be one person. But the point is, when there is civil disorder, it needs to be contained and prevented. And if you need extra law enforcement help, there's now an account, well, there will be if this passes, to specifically help with civil disorder. But that doesn't mean, civil disorder isn't the same as a nuclear plant disaster. It's not the same as a refinery fire or a flood. Civil disorder is in our criminal statutes. None of the other things you're referring to are crimes. So we're saying if there's a criminal act, and if you want to make it any criminal act, I suppose you could make that amendment, but I don't think that's your intention, Senator Marty. And I'm not impugning your motives. I just think the disaster account was never conceived of, and I will correct my prior language, to cover criminal acts.
Madam Chair, and my point is there's a huge difference between tornadoes and floods and hurricanes and everything else that people keep referring to, talking about natural disasters and industrial accidents and nuclear spills and bombings and other things like that, or industrial explosions and so on. All those things are not natural disasters either. And that was the whole argument, that this was so different from them and it was never intended to cover that. And my point earlier was, I think a lot of us who supported that disaster fund wanted it to cover whatever the needs were. And frankly, the legislation says that right now anyway. It says natural, or it says that one, it says, it lists a whole bunch of things and says these, including but not limited to, I think, I don't have the language in front of me right now, but I think it lists a bunch of things that I will agree are natural, but it doesn't exclude anything else. And now you are saying at this time in this legislation, we want to exclude certain ones of those for whatever reason. And why a bombing by one person versus 3 or more people is a difference, and why we only want to cover the law enforcement costs of it and not the other harm. I don't get it. And I thought we had bipartisan efforts to try and prepare to make sure we're ready for law enforcement. Section 1, sections 3 and 4, a lot of that stuff has nothing to do with this. You may have a disagreement with the administration and others about whether the governor should be able to do this or 3 sheriffs should be able to do this, but the bottom line is that's a discussion you can have, but the rest of that is totally irrelevant to this and inappropriate, I would argue, and something I can't support.
Thank you, Senator Marty. Senator Kif Meyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to clarify that when I think of a natural disaster and it uses the word explosion, that has more to do with the grain elevator exploding. There are natural disasters that involve an explosion, or say you have a fire and you also have an explosion with that fire, and sometimes the fire doesn't cause as much damage, but the explosion as a result of the fire. So there are many areas where you think of a natural part of an explosion. So I thought that would be helpful to put that on the record. Thank you.
Senator Kif Meyer. Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to Senator Kif Meyer's point, I was sitting here thinking about this. When you look at the examples listed within 1.4 to 1.6, a lot of those issues lacks culpability. Who are we going to blame? Mother Nature on those issues? But instances like this, when we want to talk about civil unrest, or we want to talk about nuclear disasters, there's an issue underlying those situations. And I think it would behoove the state, in order for the legislature to get back together and address those issues. So if it's civil unrest, well, we had some issues with police reform. And what did? We came back in a special session to address some of those issues. But when you're talking about high water or wind or rain, what are we going to do as a state? That's just an instance that we need to go back and repair and get those communities up and running again. So I think there is a distinction. I think this really makes sense, and I think it would benefit the state to have this inserted. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This entire conversation that we've just had has nothing to do with preparedness moving forward. And there's so much uncertainty. This was thrown in at the last minute. This is being addressed in a separate bill. This should not be in this bill. We should be focusing on preparedness and planning in creating the SAFE account. And we're out of time. We're past time, and people are all over the place on what this language means. And so this just demonstrates that this is a flawed process on a part of this bill that should not even be part of this conversation. So that's all I've got to say on that one, because I think this is off the rails.
Thank you, Senator Kent. And I know you will be a part of those conversations this weekend. And we'll continue to work on this. I did allow to go later because this is the first hearing of this particular law enforcement operations, and I wanted to make sure that we did have a proper vetting of this bill. Is there any further conversations, comments? Senator Kif Meyer, did you have something?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay.
I just forgot to put mine.
Okay. Okay. Final comments, and Senator Weber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the end of the day, I believe that this bill accomplishes those things that we need to accomplish in regards to the to potential problems that may be upcoming. And I understand the discussion that went on around some of the other provisions, but I think that at the end of the day, that points to the fact that that particular discussion is what happens when you have decisions made by the administration, and they don't involve everyone as it is concerning, the disaster relief account. The reality of it is we met in special session how many times last year? If there was a desire to make sure of what the understanding was, that request could have been made many different times and could have been discussed quite often, but it never was. As it relates to the law, the ability to establish the law enforcement operations account, I believe that the process we've outlined here adequately provides resources that are needed, actually provides a repayment and a compensation system that is definable and provable, and I thank you for the opportunity to present the bill in committee this morning. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Weber. Senator Kif Meyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I will move that Senate File 1354, as amended, be recommended to pass and to be referred to the Senate floor.
Thank you, Senator Kif Meyer. On that motion, members? Senator Marty.
Madam Chair, I strongly oppose the bill today, but I do hope we have some time where the majority will work with the minority and with the administration and try and find a real solution, because I don't think this bill will pass either. I mean, it'll pass out of here today. You may be able to pass it on the Senate floor, but this is not going to solve the problems. It creates unrelated problems, and I really think sections like 3 and 4 of the bill are really offensive at a time of a trial of related to George Floyd's death, that we're going to repeal or delay our legislative intent on trying to have police officers use deadly force only as a last resort. I really am troubled by this. I hope you'll move forward in a reasonable way, but at this point, I'm disappointed in the bill.
Thank you, Senator Marty. Senator Kent, I know we have a motion on the table.
Madam Chair,
Senator Kent.
this is about this motion. My understanding was that the majority party had planned for this to have another committee stop.
No, we do not, Senator Kent. It is going to the floor, and as I said, you obviously are going to be part of the negotiations this weekend.
I'm just saying that's what I heard from Senator Gazelka, that there was plans for this to have another committee stop. So I just wanted to check before we went through with this motion.
Yeah, I believe that is a potential move come Monday, but at this point, as of this morning,
all right,
it was decided to send it to the floor. So
just trying to avoid any procedural backsteps.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh, okay. Everybody turn their audio on, please. On Senator Kif Meyer's motion to move Senate File 1354 as amended, be recommended pass and sent to general orders. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
No.
Nay.
The motion prevails. Senate File 1354 is sent to general orders. Thank you very much, Senator Weber.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Members, we have a hearing on Tuesday. Senator Chamberlain's Senate File 438, it's the school standard suspension, and Senator Housley's Senate File 276, which is the third-party testing for driver's license. And on Thursday, we're going to have the forecast briefing. Tuesday, we couldn't have it because I believe Ways and Means has it. Wednesday, the commissioner was out of town, so we're going to have it on Thursday. So with that, no final business. The Finance Committee is adjourned. Thank you very much.